What's up, YouTubers? So I got a interesting video today. I got to repair this tow truck, and I'm kind of done doing side jobs because I'm moving out of my shop. But you know, couple calls and a please, and well, yeah, all right, I'll do it. And I thought, well, I'll shoot a video that way you guys can all enjoy and be glad that you're not doing this repair. So, anyways, what we got here. This pin is wore out of the bore. Now, this isn't really like a line boring type job because this truck is pretty much wore plumb out, but we're gonna get this filled in to where this pin doesn't pivot in here, and then there's a bushing on the inside, which I'm not gonna repair that, but the owner of this truck is gonna hammer it out and replace it. But our job today is gonna be to get this pin out and then weld this gap. And let me zoom in so you guys can see. Actually, I'll just bring the camera over. See this? That's so much slop that this pin pivots, and then there's normally supposed to be a circle clip on this, and well, that just breaks off, the pin comes off, and then your car falls off the back of this. So definitely not good, but we need to find a way to fill that in. So that's what we got cooking today. Let's get into it. Another thing I thought I would show you. So if you remember, I did a repair on another tow truck in a previous video where I welded AR500 wear plates on this part of the boom. As you can see, this one is still original, and it's wore down to probably half the thickness it was originally. Same thing at the bottom of the boom down here. Very wore. I'm not going to be repairing that, but I probably will suggest that to the guy that he should be looking at doing that so this lasts longer. But beyond this, I need to lower the boom so we can start working on getting this pin out. So first things first, we got to remove these plates somebody welded on to keep this pin in place. Basically, the C-clip or the circle clip on the other side, like I said, would break off, and then this pin would be loose. So the temporary, keyword temporary, fix was to weld these plates. I didn't do this, just to hold this pin in so it doesn't pop out. Well, guess what? It worked, but now the other side's all wallered out. So we're just gonna cut this off, lower the boom all the way to the ground, and then hopefully hammer this pin all the way out. Oh, that's pretty cool. No weld penetration. Look at that. I didn't even cut halfway through, and it literally was just sitting on there. That's all right. It held up for what its purpose was. Better for me, right? So I'm going to take the weight off of this and see if I can't tap this pin up. All right, that should be good enough for me to hopefully set this flat on the ground and then pull this pin the rest of the way out. We'll figure it out. All right, so we're flat on the ground. My hope is, and I may be wrong, that I can get this pin out without having to hammer it out and then lowering it, but hey, we'll figure it out. A lot of repairs like this is just kind of like, there we go, guessing in your best guess. There we go. Well, the pin actually isn't too bad by the look of it. Even the bushing in there, I mean, the bushing's wore, but that's just simply, you know, hammering it out, I think. Well, now that we got that out, a repair needs to be done primarily on the opposite side. So I really don't want to pull these lines off because, well, for one, I'm going to get hydraulic fluid all over my driveway. And I got a pan and shit that I could use to help with that, but I'm going to see if I can't pull this, slide it off. And if we can't, like, if I can't just stand it up somehow, like against this, and get it to where I can repair it in place without screwing around with that. But if I can, I can't. It is what it is. Apologize for the noise next door. There's a school next door and the kids are all playing, so it's not me. I don't run a circus here. Trust me on that. Reminds me of a story my father kind of once said, words of advice. He says, in the circus of your life, the clowns can run it, but never the beer tent. Never have the clowns run your beer tent. Nothing good comes out of it. All right, let's see if I can't pull it off. And there we go. Now these hoses are on a retractable spring-loaded spool, so that was pretty easy to pull off. I'm gonna, I don't know, pull these to get slack in it, and I'm gonna try and tip this up off of here, pivot it to where I have access to the hole. We'll see though. That's no bullshit heavy, probably 600 pounds. So a 1/2 inch 5/8 steel. All right, let me move the camera. Don't want this falling on my knees or my feet. There we go. Hoses, they're all right. All right. Let's take a look closer now. All right, so now that we're got the pin out, everything's set to look at. Our first concern is, well, how much is this wallered out? Well, we can see, you know, a ton. Our main concern based on how this is made is gonna be this half this way needs significant amounts of reinforcement put on. Now, my go-to for this would be to scrub this sucker completely clean, I mean spotless, and then sit here with a TIG and do about 6-7 passes and just get it perfectly filled in. I'm not sure that I'm gonna do that. This is a job that I could also stick weld. That's probably what I'm gonna end up doing. TIG is preferred for me just because I have ultimate control in what I'm putting down, and it's a lot easier. There's no risk of porosity. The problem is outside here with the wind, it's just far too windy, and I think my shielding gas would be easily blown away, and all my crap is in storage, so I can't just set up like wind blocks easily here. We're in trouble for that. So I think, honestly, best option is gonna be stick welding. And it's doable with stick, it's just gonna take more time, and you know, I'm gonna have to do a little bit more grinding, but hey, it is what it is. So the first step I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this, I got a barrel drum sandpaper disc, and I'm just gonna buff this whole inside out. I'm gonna try and get this crap out of there too and clean all of this up just to see where we're at. So I know I've said this before, and I'll say it again, I'll say it in every video actually. Never use chlorinated brake cleaner, or really brake cleaner in general, to clean stuff like this, because when you go and weld on it, you're gonna end up gassing yourself and turn yourself into a vegetable, and not the good kind. So what I would do and recommend is just using straight acetone and scrub it with scrubby brushes. Now, you saw me spill that there. It's in your best interest not to spill it. This crap is extremely flammable, and it doesn't take much to get it to light up, so be very, very careful. Again, I'm not your head of safety here. I don't even work for safety, and I'm far from a safe individual. I mean, you saw me use a grinder with no guard earlier, so, you know, just be smart about it. Biggest issue with stuff like this is all the grease that's over it, and this thing hasn't seen too much grease in its life. I mean, look at this. This should all be greased. There's nothing, you know. Grease catches fire, and fire is bad. Yeah, I mean, there's virtually no grease in there. Yeah, here's your grease. Actually, that's some kind of a gasket or slider, like a Teflon bushing. Oh well. So this isn't perfect. There's a ridge up here that I'm gonna have to sand down. That's because it was all pushed by that pin. I'm gonna have to swap out to like this style to kind of get in there. But for right now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna buff this out to just take a look at it. This thing's kind of bullshit, by the way. I didn't mention that probably in my previous video. It clearly has enough power to buff through this, but you put any torque on it with a bit bigger than like a carbide burr and it just cuts out. Like the battery on this sucker is, probably can't see that, but it's full. And like you saw, I'm not shutting it off, it just kills out. And this is a 4 amp hour battery, so it's not the battery. I mean, I'm barely even touching it. All right, that's looking much better. Let me go and swap this out and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I got a little mini disc on this and this burr here from pushing it over. We're gonna sand it all the way down. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I'm probably, oh wow, it actually pushed the ridge on the inside of this too by the feel of it. Wow. Yeah, well, I guess all that metal, it didn't get wore away. It got pushed that way. So I'm gonna have to see if I can get a grinder in to remove all of that. I don't think I'll be able to. I don't have a, what do you call it? Oh man, what are those called? Basically a grinder that extends way out. All right, I'm gonna see what I got. All right, so I looked at my tools and I don't feel like going over to storage where I don't really have the right tool anyways to get this burr off the inside, and that's pretty significant, at least a 3/16 thick. And I thought about it for a while and I'm gonna do something that you probably shouldn't do. So I'm gonna put the grinder through, put the disc here, and then I'm gonna grind it down that way to get this down. Now, again, I warned you once, you probably shouldn't do this. I wouldn't recommend it. And you shouldn't use the backside of the disc to grind on. I can't really do it this way because I can't get it started on there. So, or by started, I mean enough threads to make it reasonably safe. So that's what we're gonna do. There's a fucking bee that keeps bothering me over here. I don't know what his problem is. All right, sorry about that. Wasp or something's been bothering me. So let's keep at it. All right, so I got 99% of that burr off, as good as it needs to be. I'm gonna clean everything up again, rebuff this bore, and then we're gonna get to actually repairing this sucker. Oh, there's the grease. Just not where it needs to be. Look at that. Mmm, tasty. Well, I made a plywood fort just like you used to, or at least I used to as a kid, to cut the wind down, and I'm going to end up TIG welding this bore tighter. I thought about doing stick, and you know what, the setup for this is going to take a little bit longer, but the end result, I'll have more control over it, and I think it's just going to work better. So I got an old welding coat right here. That's going to help keep some of the wind off, and then I'm literally in a plywood fort, so there's almost no wind in here. I think I can make do with what I got here. So that's the setup. We're going to get to welding it. Here's the first pass. It's a little bit ugly. Even though I ground everything clean, there was still grease that was absorbed into that steel, and all that black soot you see was it basically burning off, and that's going to be typical. That's why TIG isn't really the best, at least for a first root pass. Here we go as a second pass. I'm gonna progressively weld out wider because the bore was lengthened like, say, front to back, but also side to side. But you just layer on more and more passes, trying to make it somewhat square. Again, here's some more passes. Don't expect pretty welds on stuff like this. Yes, it's TIG, but it just does not weld that clean. You always want to wire wheel it between passes as well to try and clean it up a little bit, because surface contaminants will lay on the surface and it makes it harder for each pass. Here we go. This is probably 4, 5, 6 passes in. The goal is to overfill it for the bore by a little bit. That way when I go back and sand it all smooth, that it's the correct size or close to it anyways. And here we go. You can see how much rounder it is, or close to round. This is probably 7 or 8 passes in. I think I do a cup, maybe 2, 3 more, and then I get to sanding it. All right, I ended up TIG welding the bore out, and I couldn't really shoot video of it for numerous reasons, one of which the camera couldn't get into the area I was in, and the thing kept overheating. Now that the temperatures dropped like 15 degrees in an hour, and I took a lunch break and I'm back here, everything's going good. So I could have stick welded this without a doubt, and it would have worked, honestly. And I kind of sort of regret not doing it, but hey, it's too late now. It's TIG welded. You could have definitely stick welded that. Now this pin, this is going in the wrong direction, but you can see it's a pretty tight fit, and it does go all the way in if it's straight. Is it perfect in this bore? Absolutely not. You know, but let's face it, this truck it's got like 500,000 miles or something on it. Honestly, this is going to outlast the rest of this boom, because there's far more bushings and fits than just this that are wore plumb out. But for right now, this will work. So what I'm going to do is tip it up and try and put it back together. One of the things too that I didn't notice, and I'll grab it here, it has some kind of a detent spring that's like, I don't really know, I guess it goes like this. But yeah, this thing's wore pretty bad, and I think that, well, I know it goes inside of here, underneath here. Hopefully I'll be able to get this pressed back in. You know, this thing doesn't appear to have been adjusted, and nothing seems to be greased. So, you know, this is far from a perfect brand new boom here. But for what we got going here, I'm going to spray this down with grease after I flip it, and hopefully we'll be able to get this sucker back together. Getting too old for this shit. Yeah, take a look how dry this is. The grease I pulled out of it looked like cardboard. You can see there's still a ton of play in this. Whoa. And that's, you know, let's face it, you know, that's this bore on that side plus the other side plus the bushing. And, you know, we'll see. I'm going to get it up in the air and we'll look at how much play it really has. Yeah, I mean, that side of the pin, it's a bit wallered out too. Well, it's better than it was. I don't know that, you know, the bushing in there's wore the hell out too, so I think what I'm going to do is clean this up, that weld, and I'm going to put those little plates they had on there, I'm going to re-weld them back on just to help keep that pin in. But until that bushing is replaced, it's hard to really say what's going to happen. Yeah. All right, well, let me get that cleaned up. All right, I cut a new plate for this just to kind of hold this pin in because I don't have a circle clip on the back side, and I wanted to show you this. This weld here, when you weld thin stuff like this with MIG onto something that's like 1 inch thick, 3/4 inch thick, the weld has no penetration into anything. I could literally grab this and pick it right off of this, and it didn't even stick to that. That's why you really shouldn't be MIG welding stuff like this on real thick plate. Flux core wire at a minimum, preferably stick. I mean, it held, it didn't pop off, but it was only a matter of time. So now I'm just gonna run a weld on this edge here, hammer it down, run a weld there, and just tack the back. All right, here's the job all done. You can see the bore is quite a bit tighter. I mean, it's about as close as you can get without machining it. So ultimately, I was successful in that repair. This truck has a ton of wear on everything else, and it's going to come down to a significant amount of repairs far beyond what I did to keep this thing functional in the upcoming months, if not years. But hey, sometimes you can only do what you can do, and you know, let's face it, it's a truck with over 400,000 miles on it. You know, it's not going to be brand new ever again in its life. But anyways, thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you learned something. Till next time.